Our program committee, as you know, is always looking about 6 months out to our programs. And back at the beginning of this year, we're looking at some different themes. And the affordable housing issue that we continue to hear about in Columbus came up as one we wanted to teach or educate our members about. And so we reached out to Bruce, who's with Homeport. And Homeport has over 5,700 residents living in more than 30 apartment and single-family home communities right here in Central Ohio. But it not only provides their housing, it also does school programming, gives them access to basic needs like food and furniture and emergency financial assistance for rent, utilities. I got to go on a tour of the Homeport, some of their properties with my wife last year. It was an amazing, eye-opening experience. Last year, Homeport played an active role in creating the Affordable Housing Alliance of Central Ohio, which has 54,000 Central Ohio residents in need of affordable housing. Bruce Luecke is our speaker today. He holds a degree from John Carroll University and an MBA from Loyola University. He began his career as a banker in the 70s at Citigroup, where he was vice president of retail operations. Then he came to Columbus in '88 as the senior vice president in charge of their ATMs, debit card business, and growing bank1.com. Does anybody know where the very first ever ATM was in the world? Yes, where was it? Kingsdale Shopping Center in Upper Arlington, right here. First one ever. Bruce can't take credit for that, but he can take credit for growing that business. And then when he left Bank One, Nationwide Bank recruited him to start their business banking business, which he grew from 0 to $6 billion in the 8 years that he was there. While he was at Nationwide Bank, he joined the board of Homeport and was a regular board member and just fell in love with them, got passionate about it, and when their executive director retired, Bruce became the new CEO and has been doing it for the last few years. How do I know Bruce? Well, his amazing daughter married my amazing stepson, and so we've become in-laws, outlaws, whatever you want to call it. And just hanging out with Bruce and his family over the last 5 years, there's some things about Bruce that aren't in his bio that I thought you might want to know about him to establish his credibility as a speaker in front of our Rotary Club. He's probably the biggest Jimmy Buffett fan that I know. And Jimmy Buffett was a fraternity brother of mine, a little older than me, but I can't find my parrot head. I was going to wear it when I got up here. I can't find it. He also golfs a lot. And rumor has it, I didn't see this, but one day he was in the Bahamas. You know where I'm going with this, Bruce? Yeah, I thought so. He not hit, but he drilled his wife when he shanked a ball, drilled her in the thigh while she sat in the golf cart. That's a bad shot for those of you that don't golf. So let's welcome Bruce Luecke to Columbus Rotary.
Well, I appreciate that, Mike. Thank you very much, and welcome. The good news is I did that when we were only married 2 years, and it'll be 38 this year, so I didn't hit her that hard, so it was okay. Well, thank you very much. I really, really do appreciate coming here to Rotary. I'm a kind of a Rotarian on leave, if you will. I see Ann Ralston back there. I was with her at Dublin AM Rotary, and so I really appreciate the work that you guys do. It's incredible work. So today, I'm going to cover three things very quickly. Number one, who's Homeport, and whom do we serve? Why do we serve them? Secondly, I want to tell you a little bit about the market environment and why it's becoming such a big issue, not just socially, but from an economic development perspective here in this town. And then thirdly, how are we addressing the issue and what is needed? So with that, let me find a... So I always start with our core purpose or our mission. And it's the only one I'll read the whole slide on, but it's creating strong communities by developing quality, affordable homes on a cornerstone of dignity, security, and opportunity. At Homeport, we feel we're in the people business. homes and real estate is just the tool that we use to be able to help individuals who are in many cases less fortunate than us from an income perspective, not necessarily overall. Mike talked a little bit about whom we serve. We've grown a little bit since he got those stats. And so first of all, we're 32 years old. We were started right around the same time the shelter board was started. So the shelter board to address the needs of the, just homeless and really Homeport, or at the time it was Columbus Housing Partnership, to address the needs of permanent affordable housing. And we had individuals who founded us, like Mr. Weiler down here, who has always remained a friend and always on my speed dial when I have questions, probably like half the room here, but also at the time Irving Schottenstein, Don Kelly, the Realtors, the city, the Columbus Foundation, and I know that you brought in James Rouse from the Enterprise Foundation to come in. And so that was 32 years ago. Since then, we now have 36 communities around town, almost 2,400 units, about 500 are single family, the rest are multifamily. And we now have 6,300 residents that we serve, and that continues to grow every year. Half of those residents are kids, all ranges obviously, and then a growing number are seniors. And in fact, we have 5 independent affordable senior facilities too, and are in the process of building a 6th. So that market is growing tremendously. Just really quickly, average income. First of all, virtually all the people who live with us, with the exception of maybe some of the seniors, they work. These are working families. Average income, though, is probably in the $20,000 to $21,000 range. And of our families that live with us, about 70% are single-parent households. So, stress on income, but also kids who are there when the parent is working 1 or maybe 2 jobs. And so I'll get to how we also work with them. Give you a feel about where we are. We're a little bit different than many other affordable housing organizations. We actually work all around Central Ohio, and in fact are now expanding out to counties adjacent to Columbus and Franklin County. In many cases, we'll either do work independently. In all cases, we'll work very closely with neighborhoods or the communities in which we serve. We want to be a good neighbor. We want to be a good partner. But also we'll work closely with other organizations who might be in any one of these areas who just don't have the capacity maybe that we do to build, and so we create partnerships with them in order to develop, and they do a great job on the services side and the people side, which really complements any of the work that we do. Up here, if you see the colors, if you can make them out, the green are our multifamily apartments, our purple are single-family rentals. Virtually all those single-family rentals are lease purchase rentals. So because of the way we finance them, we use low-income housing tax credits. They have to remain a rental property for 15 years. But then the individuals can purchase those. And we have a growing number of those homes that have been purchased. Actually, it's a really great joy to watch someone who's lived in that house for a long period of time, buy that house. In fact, probably one of our most notable ones was a woman by the name of Joyce Maines, 75 years old. She and her husband, saved. We have educational classes that we provide. They worked with us. And she made a vow, she and her husband made a vow to their kids that they would buy this house to pass down to their family. And unfortunately, Mr. Maine died a year before that could happen. But Joyce followed through, and she purchased the home, and the closing was so much fun, and Joyce Beatty came out to visit her on her porch, and she's just a neat lady, and so it's that that makes our day. Mike talked a little bit about the 54,000 households. So let me shift a little bit to kind of the market environment and what's going on out there. At the Affordable Housing Alliance, just research study 2 or 3 years ago. And the number, probably you see that number a lot, or quoted a lot. It's 54,000 households who are paying more than 50% of their income on housing. So to be even more specific than that, these are 54,000 households who make incomes at the poverty level down, which is about $30,000 down, who are paying 50% of their income. There's another 25,000 households who are paying between 30% and 50% of their housing. So it's becoming a need, and in fact, if you expand that even further, and I don't know how many of you saw a great article by Business First just previous last weekend, but the poverty population in Columbus is growing. In fact, it's growing 3 times faster than the general population. And it's not just the cities. Every single suburb but 3 have growth of poverty faster than their general population. Anybody want to guess what those 3 are? New Albany is not. So it's Dublin, Grandview, and Canal Winchester. And, you know, as you see it, it really, it's a lot of scarcity from actually units that are available for people to buy. You know, the striking thing, and this is not so much a housing piece, but an income piece, is 9 out of the 10 of the top locations with the most annual openings don't pay enough to afford what's called a housing wage. And a housing wage in this marketplace, to pay 30% of their income on housing, would be right around $16,000. So, you know, growth in jobs. In fact, that article showed that where the city is really growing are jobs that are paying at poverty rate or double poverty rate, which is $60,000 and down, not necessarily at the high end of the market, although we've seen tremendous growth, obviously, here in Columbus. And, you know, the other piece that's worth noting is Columbus, unlike many cities across the country, is very dependent upon income tax. And so the more businesses they have in Central Ohio, the more people who are in Columbus particularly, the more people who actually live and work in Columbus is really important to Columbus and to the livelihood of Columbus. And so that's why this is not only a social issue, it's a growing economic development issue here. Additionally to that, the Builders Industry Association did a research study last year and noted that there's an additional, if you presume that we're going to get 1 million more people by the year 2050, an additional 8,000 more housing units are needed annually to be able to even keep up with that trend. And so we were short last year. In fact, Bob Schottenstein was over at the office this morning and he was talking about MI. He builds more houses in the other 14 markets they serve than he does in Columbus. And for a number of different reasons. A lot of them are zoning issues or restrictions or just a number of different things that are really increasing the price of the house or restricting the amount of land and density that can be used. And so the average need is about 14,000 to 15,000 per year. And when they did the study, they estimated, assuming the 1 million more people would come, how much housing would truly be needed by 2050. And the need would be another almost 458,000 new units. And of those 458,000, it was about half and half single-family homes, as well as, and then 2 apartments. But what I noted, particularly in the rental units, because they did an income cut on it, 83% of all those apartments would be for people making incomes of $75,000 and down. So we don't quite build that fast. And the capital is not always necessarily there, or the cost of capital is not always there. But so you can see the stress that it's starting potential stress that's starting to put on the community. And that's why I think you've seen, you know, the story kind of increase over the last 2 or 3 years, and why it's important, because if we're going to continue to drive new businesses to Columbus, we're going to need housing. I'll just give you an example. There's a large distribution center up in Delaware County. They have 140% turnover. They can't get enough workers because of transportation. They just can't get the transportation up there. So it's an issue that our community is certainly addressing. So let me move back to, okay, well, how does Homeport satisfy that need? So we try to be as focused as we possibly can. In fact, we only have 3 strategic priorities. If it's not in there, we don't do it. So very first one is close the housing gap. I'll touch on that just a little later, but you just heard some of the statistics around that and why we need to build. Secondly is a laser focus on our residents. So our 6,200 residents, and by laser focus we mean 3 things. First and foremost, we want them living in a great, quality, safe, affordable neighborhood, house, whatever that may be. We want to be the standard for that. Secondly, we want to keep them housed. We had 62 people last year that we helped prevent evictions for purely emergency financial reasons. It's hard for many of us to imagine, but for many of our residents, if an emergency pops up, such as they need a major car repair, sometimes they have to make a decision about regarding getting the car fixed so they can get to work or paying the rent. And when that happens, we work with them. And so we provide financial education, but the Columbus Foundation has been great in partnering with us to provide also financial support to pay that 1 month's rent when they miss it, so we can keep people on track and out of any of the eviction courts. And then thirdly, people need to be connected. They need to be connected for a number of different reasons, whether that's after school programs or summer programs. It could be health, could be in jobs, it could be a number of different things. And so we have social workers on staff, 3 or 4 social workers on staff, who work with our residents every day, and when an issue arises, they connect them to the appropriate organization to work with, and then follow back around to make sure they're taken care of. And so we're not in a social services organization. There's so many wonderful social services organizations in the city. We work very closely with them. We're very dependent upon them and grateful for them. And so we just, stability and resiliency for our homeowners is absolutely key. And then lastly, we need to ensure a mission endures. We need to be doing this 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, right? And to us, that means 2 things. We need to be great stewards of the capital that we have, and in fact, we need to continue to raise more capital, but we have to be responsible there. And secondly, to do this, you need great people. You need passionate people, and you need smart, educated people. And so we have to compete with all the other developers who can pay a lot more than we can in the marketplace to do some really complicated things. As Mike said, I was a banker. I've seen a lot of commercial transactions. I've never seen more complicated transactions and layering of capital than I've ever seen in affordable. It's almost mind-numbing some days, but it is what it is. That's what needs to be done in order to sustain the rents. Because just to give you a feel, depending upon the financing and what's used to build that housing or to develop the housing, if tax credits are used, so you've probably seen low-income housing tax credits work great, which is a great tool, public-private partnership. It represents up to 70% of the equity in the building. Yet at the same time, it also means it has 30 years worth of compliance, meaning rents are restricted for 30 years. Expenses are not restricted for 30 years, but rents are restricted for 30 years. And so we need to make sure we manage those properties, and balance the people needs all at the same time. Quickly, our target market. We primarily serve two groups. So our primary target market are people making 60% of the area median income. So in this marketplace, for a family of 4, that's about $45,000. Area median income for income qualification is really determined by the number of people in the household. So that's for a family of 4. For a family of 1, it's about $23,000. So if you're by yourself and you make 23, you pay what you pay based upon the $23,000. And then our secondary target is really a growth target for us, and we've just started doing this in the last 2 to 3 years. And that is what we're also starting to see is there's more and more pressure on the middle class, the working class workers. We call it workforce housing. It's not housing that can be financed in, with tax credit type of deals. It's more traditional real estate. But to be able to sustain the rents and to have the rents, you need to have a low cost capital stack and partners in that. And so we've started to do that by ourselves and with partners. And so we hopefully in the next couple weeks we'll be announcing one with a partner up in north side of the city in Clintonville, which will be half and half, market rate and affordable, which is a great way to subsidize what we do, and it provides mixed unit. Just so what our units look like, I'm really proud of what we built. Mike said he took a walk through it. Now, he did leave his business cards in one of our senior homes. But other than that, so you see the single-family homes, and you see the senior. And our partners there are, the people you hear about every day, right? It's the Rossillis and the Ilfords and so we have Rockfords. We have, great partners who work together with us to build, and we're really proud. Mike mentioned the bus tour. If you want to really touch what we do, we have bus tours that are sponsored by State Auto every 6 weeks or so. Just call our office and sign up. I became a board member because of it, because what I saw. Chris Yoon, who's our board chair, became a board member because of a tour she went on. So if you ever really want to feel and touch it, absolutely go in it. So I kind of already explained, why this is all important, and we're thrilled to death that, more action is happening from a financing perspective. The $50 million portion of the $1 billion city bond issue, which passed in May, is huge. Just a couple weeks ago, Bob from the Affordable Housing Trust and the banks and private industries were involved in helping to create a $100 million housing action fund. That'll be used primarily to acquire currently affordable housing and to keep it affordable. Right now, that's a tough thing to do in this marketplace. There's a lot of capital coming into this marketplace, investing in what I call B and C class type of apartments, doing some rehab and then lifting the prices. And so, and we had a hard time competing because we don't have ready cash, right, all the time to be able to do that and close in 30 days. So this Housing Action Fund is huge in doing that. And the county will also be announcing some things in the next few months. But I think, as you can see, we need to increase access to high-paying jobs. There's no silver bullet in what we do. And in fact, after the research was done by the Affordable Housing Alliance, we came back with 3 recommendations. The first 2 are very housing related. We do need to build more or to preserve more. Secondly, there's a good amount of rehab that needs to be done. So if you think about a neighborhood like Milo Grogan, there are a tremendous number of people who have lived in that neighborhood, single-family home neighborhood, in many cases seniors, who aren't able to afford to continue to keep their house up, and so every day they're losing value in their homes. And so to be able to get rehab dollars into those neighborhoods, it not only helps the individuals, but it brings the neighborhood up at the same time. But the third recommendation really had nothing to do with actually building anything. It had more to do with how we can help people make more money, get a better job. I know when we talk to our residents, and we ask them about job training programs, and we help them go into job training programs, so many of them say, just, hold on, you need to understand something first. Number one, I barely work paycheck to paycheck. I can't afford to take a day off, much less a week off, 2 weeks off, a month off to go into a job training program. And so really the recommendation that we made to county, city, private funds was, can we create a kind of a tactical rental assistance program that will provide a safety net for people so that when they do go into training programs, they're not scared of losing their house or their apartment when they do go in those programs. And when they're finished with the training program, they're finished with housing assistance. So, so it's really not a, you know, a development type of issue, but it is a housing issue and an income issue. And so, you know, again, stabilized housing is important to individuals. I will say the services that we provide and our peers provide and do such a great job on, you know, whether it's physical or mental or behavioral health. You know, it's not only the services, but the social connectedness side of it too becomes so important. And we have, you know, we have a lot of kids, like I said before, so the long-term success of our kids by offering them programs and helping them get into programs, the Y has been a great partner for us, for example, for many years, is so important so that we can help them. And I would say lastly, you know, if the region really does want to achieve growth of 1 million more people by 2050, we have to look at these things, because there won't be workers, or it'll be difficult to attract jobs to Columbus in order to satisfy the need. And so I'm gratified that I've been able to be a part of this organization, and also gratified that just in the last couple of years, the whole idea of affordable housing, the need for affordable housing has really increased and become part of a really important part of the Columbus story and the future of Columbus as we go forward. So I thank you very much for your time today. Sure. Yeah, if there's anybody have any questions, Joanne.
Yes. What a great program, so comprehensive, the collaborations are great. Is it an interesting story how this all started? I mean, did somebody just wake up one morning and say, gee, we should do this? What's the history of it? I mean, you showed us how it's evolved. Where did it come from?
So and Bob's right. In fact, we last year we have an event every year where we offer an award called the Voice and Vision Award. And last year, well, I guess the year before, the Kelly family was introduced. So Don, and we've had 3 generations of Kellys on our board. And Bob just yelled out Don Kelly. I think Don Kelly was the driving force behind making sure that, you know, this got done. Bob, in his modesty, probably, you know, was a major part of that, absolutely too. But I think it was, from the stories that I've heard from you, it was basically civic and business leaders who said, you know, we got to attack this issue. We're seeing a problem here, and so something needs to be done, and they stepped up to do that, and we appreciate that, Bob. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. A huge challenge for us. We want to keep the city a great city. We have to meet all these challenges. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. Our speaker next week is Peter Watson. Peter is CEO of Greif Corporation. Greif is perhaps one of the least well-known of the major corporations in Central Ohio. I thought maybe they're still in the Fortune 500. They're actually about in the 600 list, but they are a major corporation. And so their CEO, Peter Watson, will be our presenter next week. So hope you can all bring lots of folks at the event. And with that, I want to